Good evening. This doesn't look dangerous, does it? But it's killed plenty of men and women. It's made beggars of many and millionaires of a few. Mighty few. Oh, dear me. I'm terribly sorry. The Mark II Mazda MX-5. It was supposed to evoke the spirit of British sports cars of the 1960s, like the Mazda MX-5 and the Lotus Elan. But is it any good? Should you care? Why, let's find out, shall we? Matsuda! Hi!
Here we are, we'll never be the same, and on the screens of our lives flash words of good songs that we've not yet sung. And we're not worried about the future, and we're not guilty about the past. We're pressing on together, and it's a joy that we'll outlast these sorrows. And it's not as if we don't have to deal with our shortcomings. It's not as if we don't.
So welcome to yet another episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. Today we are in Kent. Behind the camera once again is Mr. Matt Richardson from Furious Driving, and we're on his home turf. We're round the corner from where he lives, and the roads around here are actually really good. I'm not surprised he lives down here. We're driving Rob's 2003 Mazda MX-5 1.8 manual. This car has come through an offer from YouTube. Rob has his own channel on YouTube called The Open Road, which I'll link to in the description below, so you can see more really brilliant footage of this absolutely fantastic little car. So thanks, Rob. Fob. So the Mazda MX-5 was first launched 30 years ago in 1989, and it was actually a car that had quite a long development process. The Mark I MX-5, also known as the NA, lasted until 1998, when this Mark II model, the NB, was introduced. This is a facelift car, which dates from 2003. It really is a delight to, a bit of a delight to drive, and I've been very much enjoying it, despite the fact that the weather today hasn't been so great. So the NB MX-5 was launched in 1998, and it was facelifted in the year 2001. This is a 2003 car. It's on the Northern Ireland plate, so that's not immediately obvious, but what you'll notice is the rear lenses are a different colour from the pre-facelift cars, and it's also got spaces for fog lights, although this car doesn't have them. It still feels, though, a very, very kind of old-fashioned type of car. It is remarkable how kind of period this feels, even if it's not a 60s car. It feels like, I don't know, Triumph TR6, something like that, especially when you've got these vanity mirrors and the sun visors up here. It feels very, very old-fashioned, which is great. It has this real sort of period retro feel to it, which is just brilliant. It adds to the fact this car's got a longitudinal engine, it's got rear-wheel drive, and you can feel, if you're, especially on a day like this when it's a little bit damp outside, you get the back end out a little bit too easily. One of the things that's great about this car is the short, stubby gear lever and the very precise change. You can get an automatic NB MX-5, that's normally a post-facelift 1.6, but clearly this is a driver's car, and you know, the vast majority of people would actually want a manual. If you get the sport version or the 10th anniversary edition, you can actually get a 6-speed gearbox. This is only a 5-speed because it's a basic 1.8. The engine develops around 145 horsepower, something like that. And in a car that really doesn't weigh anything, I'd be surprised if this car weighs a ton, then it gets very lively performance. One disadvantage of that is that the fuel economy isn't particularly good. A car like this, you'd expect around 30 miles per gallon, which, when you look at it and see how tiny it is, it doesn't look very impressive. But you don't buy this car for practicality and fuel economy, you buy it for the pleasure of driving it, and that delivers in spades. So I've mentioned the fact that there are 1.6 and 1.8 litre engines. The 1.6 engine developed around 110 horsepower. It was slightly upgraded for the 2001 facelift. The 1.8 first of all developed 140 horsepower, and then with the facelift it went up to about 145. We think this car, because it's got a modified exhaust on it, is around, say, 150, which, to be honest, in a car like this is absolutely plenty. Although trying to find an unmodified NB MX-5 is like trying to find a needle in a haystack. There aren't very many of them. In terms of trim levels for a Mark II MX-5, there are just the basic 1.8 and 1.6 levels. There is also what was called the S initially, and then later the Sport, which after the facelift of the Sport had a 6-speed gearbox. This particular car we don't think has air conditioning, so not that you necessarily need that in a convertible, but they're not the most feature-packed cars, especially when you think about the ND MX-5 that's currently in production, which has a lot more features in this. Things like reversing cameras and, you know, big touch screens. You just don't get that in any of this sort of car. You just don't get anything like that. One of the things that is very nice about the car, apart from the gear change, is the clarity of the instruments, which are the same actually as on a post-facelift last generation Mazda 323F. I drove one of those in 2002, funnily enough. They're nice and clear. Because this is the post-facelift car, we've got white dials with sort of red numbers on them, and it looks really sporty actually. It's nice and easy to read. And we've actually also got an oil pressure gauge, which is brilliant. That is something that harks back again to something like a Lotus Elan. You'll notice though the engine's a little bit on the noisy side, but that's okay. It does have variable valve timing, although I don't think I've actually driven it sort of hard enough to actually get anywhere near that. You know, this is Tweed Jacket Reviews after all. We drive in a moderate way in Tweed Jacket Reviews, but it is satisfying to satisfy noise, particularly with this performance exhaust fitted, which probably gives us about 5 more horsepower, but definitely gives the car that kind of just really sort of thrusting forward feel, and you do feel pinned back in your seat, particularly if you shove it into a lower gear and go for it. The main reason why someone might buy something like an MX-5 anyway is the fact that they handle well. With this balance of the front engine longitudinally mounted and rear wheel drive, it makes it really easy to place the car in corners, particularly because it's so small. So we've got the series of bends here, just come off the main dual carriageway, and that feels good. The steering has a nice weight to it. It is power assisted. Some of the earlier cars were not. Yes, it is just a car that feels really alive. It feels very, very taut. The chassis is a little bit on the jiggly side in terms of the ride, but that's what you'd expect. I mean, I think a Lotus Elan, to be honest, would have been worse than this. But it is good. I can see why people love these. I can see why Rob loves it too. You might notice we've had to switch cameras because the other ones had a bit of an error, but fortunately our footage wasn't lost, which is great. Yes, so we are back in the MX-5, not that you saw any of that, of course, and we are driving back on the same road, and I'm just reminded how nice this car is to drive. The instruments, nice and clear on this post-facelift car, like the post-facelift 323 at the time, and still with this rifle bolt gear change. The build quality of the interior actually feels quite solid. It's not the most, perhaps, inspiring of places, but it is pretty nice. One of the things to be aware of is it is quite difficult to climb in and out of this car with the hood on, and of course the day it's raining, so we have got the hood up, although later on you will see some images of the hood down because that was when it was nicer. The only other car I think I've ever driven which has this same level of driver engagement, and bear in mind that doesn't even have power steering, is my friend Adrian's 1971 Alfa Romeo GT Junior that has a 2000cc engine in it from a later Spider. That feels the same as this. The driving position isn't even as good, but that has the same level of kind of very, very old-fashioned feel, you know, We have got driver aids in this one though. We've got airbags, we've got ABS, but with the sort of drivetrain, I don't even think this car's got a dual mass flywheel. So it is a bit interesting if you know, you're a bit ham-fisted of a driver, and to be honest, I can be like that sometimes. That's why I tend to drive modern cars as opposed to these most of the time. But this has to be for the amount of money they're still being asked for, which you know, isn't really that much, although they're climbing all the time, so make sure you get one before the prices go stratospheric. The best kind of sort of cost ratio to driving enjoyment car that you can get. I don't want to promise anything that you will enjoy your MX-5 because they do have problems, but I'm having a great time. In terms of the problems with an MX-5, just to elaborate on the rust issue, a lot of Japanese cars of the 1990s did have problems with rust around the arches in particular, and this car is no exception whatsoever. Rob has spent a lot of time, a lot of effort on this 120,000 mile example of getting those arches looking good, and also the sills tend to rot on these too. That's just something to be aware of if you're buying one of these cars, but it's not full of rust or full of fiberglass. And considering how old the car is, it's a 2003, so it's over 15 years old, and just so many miles it's done, it feels very tight. Gear shift feels rifle bolt accurate. The brakes are brilliant. The steering's brilliant. The suspension doesn't feel worn, so we suspect the bushes might have been changed at some point. But this is just a lot of fun. Not the most practical car in the world, not the most modern feeling car in the world, but people don't buy these cars for either of those reasons, and I can understand why. Thank you, Rob, once again for giving me this incredible experience. Ever since sitting in one of these in a dealership in Durham in 2002, I wanted to drive one, and it's an ambition finally fulfilled here.
And here we are with anchors tying us to what we'll call home, even if the side of it has not yet touched our eyes. And here we are and we're together, even if we are apart, and we're together.
I've heard for many, many years that the MX-5 is one of the best cars that it's cars to drive, and it's the best-selling two-seater roadster in the world. And this really does live up to both those monikers. It is superb to pilot along country roads. Anyway, let's have a look at this car's more practical side now, not that there is very much to talk about, and have a look in the boot. One of the ways you can tell this is a Mazda from the 1990s is the boot opens with a key. Just put it in there. Now the boot is actually quite large for this type of car. We think it's about 250 litres. I couldn't really find the exact capacity figure online, but we've got all our filming equipment in here, and it takes it quite comfortably. I think this would be perfect for a car to just take away for the weekend, which is of course what it's designed for. As for no rear seats in an MX-5, we'll go straight into the front. Getting in with the roof open is pretty easy. This is one of the cars that I would say has the best driving position in the world. Not that I want to sound like Jeremy Clarkson, of course. It's very comfortable in here, and there's so much kind of this retro feel in here. We've got chrome ringed instruments, we've got a proper 5-speed manual gearbox, proper handbrake, and tiny little sort of controls everywhere just so everything fits in. It's an absolute work of art. One of the other ways of accessing various parts of this car is to look in this little locked cubby hole here, where we find releases for the fuel filler cap and the boot. Obviously we use the key because it's a little bit easier than fumbling around in here, and you can lock this as well to stop people stealing your fuel or seeing what's in your boot, but I wouldn't trust this lock with too much force really. I've got my secret mission documents here. I mean, this is a two-seater sports car, so I'm not really expecting much in terms of storage, but if I open up the glove box and put those in there, you actually see they fit really nicely. That has really surprised me. Well done, Mazda. Visibility in this car is actually remarkable. Obviously, with the hood down, the rear visibility is absolutely great. Forward visibility is really good as well. The bonnet does slope away quite a long way. You've got to be aware of that. But the engine's mounted longitudinally, which is probably why you do actually have that long bonnet, and it looks brilliant as well. The steering wheel is a little bit low on my knees for some reason. I think it does adjust, but position otherwise is so incredibly good in here. The seats don't look like they're very comfortable, actually they are, and they hold you very nicely in the corners too. The car has these stalks which look like they're a lot older than they actually are. I mean, this car dates from 2003 and they look like they're from 1970s, but maybe that's part of the retro charm. We've got a modern stereo fitted in here. We do have just normal heat and ventilation controls, which look quite old-fashioned, but they're nice and simple to use. The centre console is it seems quite narrow, but actually because the car's so small, it seems quite wide. Electric mirror switches are there. The electric window switches are just here. Again, that's a sort of classic Mazda 80s 90s part there. These switches, I think, are spoke to an MX-5. They look pretty old-fashioned. They're pretty easy to use. The hazard warning switch is up here, which is really good. I don't know why this car looks like it's got two radios. There's one that's in here, and there's a gap for another one now. I don't know why you'd need two radios in a car, but you know, there we go. And also it's got a headlamp leveling switch here. This car I don't think has air conditioning because this is a base model. It's not a Sport or an S, but I mean, do you really need air conditioning in a convertible car? There's a very tiny little illuminated interior light here, which is quite sweet actually. That. In terms of safety, this car does have twin airbags. I think all the Mark IIs actually did, some of the Mark Is didn't. I'm not sure we've got side airbags in this particular car. Some of them did have it. We've also got this nice rollover hoop on either side for the driver and passenger, which I would absolutely recommend you don't remove. And this windscreen must be nice and reinforced, although it kind of is looking like it might be slightly lower than my head, which is slightly disconcerting, but I'm sure it's fine. So then, what do I think of the Mark II MX-5? This is, without a doubt, the best roadster of its kind. It's really good to drive, it's very well thought out. I mean, it does suffer from rust and things like that, but what car from the late 90s does not? I reckon that if you can get one of these right now before they go stratospherically expensive, you'll be doing very well indeed. Oh, dear me, I'm terribly sorry. You may have noticed now, Mr. Bond, that we are very serious people. Your good health is of no concern to us whatsoever. Thank you for watching this episode of Tweed Jacket Reviews. My name is Joseph Lloyd. I'm an independent vehicle consultant. I find cars for people. Please subscribe to the channel if you'd like to do that. Don't forget to like this video and to leave a comment below. If you wish me to source a car for you, I'd love to do that. My website is www.lloydvehicleconsulting.co.uk. Please use the Contact Me page on my website to get in touch. I've got a Facebook page as well. It's facebook.com/Lloyd Vehicle Consulting. Thank you.